So, hello, peoples. Politics is shit in the world. I'm listening how to do shit politics. Playing Machiavelli, the Prince audiobook in the background. Maybe. I don't know if it's interesting. I will do it.
The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Dedication to the magnificent Lorenzo di Piero de' Medici. Those who strive to obtain the good graces of a prince are accustomed to come before him with such things as they hold most precious, or in which they see him take most delight, whence one often sees horses, arms, cloth of gold, precious stones, and similar ornaments presented to princes worthy of their greatness. Desiring therefore to present myself to your magnificence with some testimony of my devotion towards you, I have not found among my possessions anything which I hold more dear or value so much as the knowledge of the actions of great men, acquired by long experience in contemporary affairs and a continual study of antiquity, which, having reflected upon it with great and prolonged diligence, I now send, digested into a little volume, to your magnificence. And although I may consider this work unworthy of your countenance, nevertheless, I trust much to your benignity that it may be acceptable, seeing that it is not possible for me to make a better gift than to offer you the opportunity of understanding, in the shortest time, all that I have learned in so many years, and with so many troubles and dangers, which work I have not embellished with swelling or magnificent words, nor stuffed with rounded periods, nor with any extrinsic allurements or adornments whatever, with which so many are accustomed to embellish their works. For I have wished either that no honour should be given of it, or else that the truth of the matter and the weightiness of the theme shall make it acceptable. Nor do I hold with those who regard it as a presumption if a man of low and humble condition dare to discuss and settle the concerns of princes, because, just as those who draw landscapes place themselves below in the plain to contemplate the nature of the mountains and of lofty places, and in order to contemplate the plains, place themselves upon high mountains, even so to understand the nature of the people, it needs to be a prince, and to understand that of princes, it needs to be of the people. Take then your magnificence, this little gift in the spirit in which I send it, wherein, if it be diligently read and considered by you, you will learn my extreme desire that you should attain that greatness which fortune and your other attributes promise. And if your magnificence, from the summit of your greatness, will sometimes turn your eyes to the nature of the people, it needs to be a prince, and to understand that of princes, it needs to be of the people. Take then your magnificence, this little gift in the spirit in which I send it, wherein, if it be diligently read and considered by you, you will learn my extreme desire that you should attain that greatness which fortune and your other attributes promise. And if your magnificence, from the summit of your greatness, will sometimes turn your eyes to these lower regions, you will see how unmeritedly I suffer a great and continued malignity of fortune. Chapter 1. How many kinds of principalities there are, and by what means they are acquired. All states, all powers, that have held and hold rule over men, have been and are either republics or principalities. Principalities are either hereditary, in which the family has been long established, or they are new. The new are either entirely new, as was Milan to Francesco Sforza, or they are, as it were, members annexed to the hereditary state of a prince who has acquired them, as was the kingdom of Naples to that of the King of Spain. Such dominions thus acquired are either accustomed to live under a prince or to live in freedom, and they are acquired by either the arms of the prince himself or of others, or else by fortune or by ability. Chapter 2. Concerning hereditary principalities,
I really like the violins
I
here.
will leave out all discussion on republics, inasmuch in another place I have written of them at length, and will address myself only to principalities. In doing so, I will keep to the order indicated above, and discuss how such principalities are to be ruled and preserved. I say at once there are fewer difficulties in holding hereditary states, and those long accustomed to the family of their prince, than new ones. For it is sufficient only not to transgress the customs of his ancestors, and to deal prudently with circumstances as they arise, for a prince of average powers to maintain himself in his state, unless he be deprived of it by some extraordinary and excessive force, and if he should be so deprived of it, whenever anything sinister happens to the usurper, he will regain it. We have in Italy, for example, the Duke of Ferrara, who could not have withstood the attacks of the Venetians in 84, nor those of Pope Julius in 10, unless he had been long established in his dominions. For the hereditary prince has less cause and less necessity to offend, hence it happens that he will be more loved, and unless extraordinary vices cause him to be hated, it is reasonable to expect that his subjects will be naturally well disposed towards him, and in the antiquity and duration of his rule, the memories and motives that make for change are lost, for one change always leaves the two thing for another. Chapter 3. Concerning mixed principalities. But if the difficulties occur in a new principality, and firstly, if it be not entirely new, but is, as it were, a member of a state which, taken collectively, may be called composite, the changes arrive chiefly from an inherent difficulty which there is in all new principalities. For men change their rulers willingly, hoping to better themselves, and this hope induces them to take up arms against him who rules, wherein they are deceived, because they afterwards find by experience that they have gone from bad to worse. This follows also on another natural and common necessity, which always causes a new prince to burden those who have submitted to him with his soldiery, and with infinite other hardships which he must put upon his new acquisition. In this way you will have enemies in all those whom you have injured in seizing the principality, and you are not able to keep those friends who put you there, because of your not being able to satisfy them in the way they expected, and you cannot take strong measures against them, feeling bound to them. For although one may be very strong in armed forces, yet in entering a province one has always need of the goodwill of the natives. For these reasons Louis XII, King of France, quickly occupied Milan, and as quickly lost it, and had to turn him out the first time it only needed Ludovico's own forces, because those who had opened the gates to him, finding themselves deceived in their hopes of future benefit, would not endure the ill treatment of the new prince. It is very true that, after acquiring rebellious provinces a second time, they are not so lightly lost afterwards, because the prince, with little reluctance, takes the opportunity of rebellion to punish the delinquents, to clear out the suspects, and to strengthen himself in the weakest places. Thus, to cause France to lose Milan, for the first time it was enough for Duke Ludovico to raise the insurrections on the borders, but to cause him to lose it a second time, it was necessary to bring the whole world against him, and that his army should be defeated and driven out of Italy, which followed from the causes above mentioned. Nevertheless, Milan was taken from France both the first and second time. The general reasons for the first have been discussed. It remains to name those for the second, and see what resources he had, and what anyone in his situation would have had for maintaining himself more securely in his acquisition than did the King of France. Now I say that those dominions which, when acquired, are added to an ancient state by him who acquires them, are either of the same country and language, or they are not. When they are, it is easier to hold them, especially when they have not been accustomed to self-government, and to hold them securely is enough to have destroyed the family of the prince who was ruling them, because the two peoples, preserving in other things the old conditions, and not being unlike in customs, will live quietly together as one has seen in Brittany, Burgundy, Gascony and Normandy, which have been bound to France for so long a time, and, although there may be some difference in language, nevertheless the customs are alike, and the people will easily be able to get on amongst themselves. He who has annexed them, if he wishes to hold them, has only to bear in mind two considerations. The one, that the family of their former lord is extinguished. The other, that neither their laws nor their taxes are altered, so that in a very short time they will become entirely one body with the old principality. But when states are acquired in a country differing in language, customs or laws, there are difficulties, and good fortune and great energy are needed to hold them. And one of the greatest and most real helps would be that he who has acquired them should go and reside there. This would make his position more secure and durable, as it has made that of the Turk in Greece, who, notwithstanding all other measures taken by him for holding that state, if he had not settled there, would not have been able to keep it. Because if one is on the spot, disorders are seen as they spring up, and one can quickly remedy them. But if one is not at hand, and they are heard of only when they are great, one can no longer remedy them. Besides this, the country is not pillaged by your officials. The subjects are satisfied by prompt recourse to the prince. Thus, wishing to be good, they have more cause to love him, and wishing to be otherwise, to fear him. He who would attack that state from the outside
Hello,
must have the utmost
ferrofluid
caution. As long
druid.
as the prince reside there,
Does
it
this
can only
video
be rested
game?
from him with
Yes.
the greatest difficulty.
Very old
other
video game and
is to set colonies to
audiobook
one or two
and in the
places,
background,
which
yes.
may be as keys to that
How are
state,
you?
for it is necessary either to
Fellow
do this,
gamer.
or to else keep there a great number of cavalry and infantry. A prince does not spend much on colonies, for with little or no expense he can send them out and keep them there, and he offends a minority only of the citizens from whom he takes lands and houses to give them to the new inhabitants, and those whom he offends, remaining poor and scattered, are never able to injure him, whilst the rest, being uninjured, are easily kept quiet, and at the same time are anxious not to err, for fear should it happen to them as it has to those who have been despoiled. In conclusion, I say that these colonies are not costly, they are more faithful, they injure less, and the injured, as has been said, being poor and scattered, cannot hurt. Upon this, one has to remark that men ought to be either well treated or crushed, because they avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones, they cannot. Therefore the injury that is done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. But in maintaining armed men there in place of colonies, one spends much more, having to consume on the garrison all the income from the state, so that the acquisition turns into a loss, and many more are exasperated, because the whole state is injured. Through the shifting of the garrison up and down, all become acquainted with hardship, and all become hostile, and they are enemies who, whilst beaten on their own ground, are able yet to do hurt. For every reason, therefore, such guards are as useless as a colony is useful. Again, the prince who holds a country differing in the above respects ought to make himself the head and defender of his less powerful neighbours, and to weaken the more powerful amongst them, taking care that no foreigner as powerful as himself shall, by any accident, get a footing there, for it will always happen that such a one will be introduced by those who are discontented, either through excessive ambition or through fear, as one has seen already. The Romans were brought to Greece by the Aetolians, and in every other country where they obtained a footing, they were brought in by the inhabitants. And the usual course of affairs is that, as soon as a powerful foreigner enters a country, all the subject states are drawn to him, moved by the hatred which they feel against the ruling power. So in that respect, to those subject states he is not to take any trouble to gain them over to himself, for the whole of them quickly rally to the state which he has acquired there. He has only to take care that they do not get hold of too much power, and too much authority, and then with his own forces, and with their goodwill, he can easily keep down the more powerful of them, as to remain entirely master in the country, and he who does not properly manage this business will soon lose what he has acquired, and whilst he does it, he will have endless difficulties and troubles. The Romans, in the countries which they annexed, observed closely these measures. They sent colonies and maintained friendly relations with the minor powers, without increasing their strength. They kept down the greater and did not allow any strong foreign powers to gain authority. Greece appears to me sufficient for an example. The Achaeans and the Aetolians were kept friendly by them, but the kingdom of Macedonia was humbled. Antiochus was driven out, yet the merits of the Achaeans and the Aetolians never secured for them permission to increase their power, nor did the persuasions of Philip ever induce the Romans to be his friends without first humbling him, nor did the influence of Antiochus make them agree that he should retain any lordship over the country, because the Romans did in these instances what all prudent princes ought to do, who have to regard not only present troubles, but also future ones, for which they must prepare with every energy, because, when foreseen, it is easy to remedy them, but if you wait until they approach, the medicine is no longer in time, because the malady has become incurable. For it happens in this, as the physicians say, it happens in a hectic fever, that in the beginning of the malady it is easy to cure, but difficult to detect, but in the course of time, not having either been detected or treated in the beginning, it becomes easy to detect, but difficult to cure. This it happens in affairs of state, for when the evils that arise that have been foreseen, which it is only given to a wise man to see, they can be quickly redressed. But when, though not having been foreseen, they have been permitted to grow in a way that everyone can see them, there is no longer a remedy. Therefore the Romans, foreseeing troubles, dealt with them at once, and, even to avoid a war, would not let them come to a head, for they knew that war is not to be avoided, but it is only to be put off to the advantage of others. Moreover, they wished to fight with Philip and Antiochus in Greece, so not to have to do so in Italy. They could have avoided both, but this they did not wish, nor did that ever please them which is ever in the mouths of the wise ones of our time. Let us enjoy the benefits of the time, but rather the benefits of their own valour and prudence, for time drives everything before it, and is able to bring with it the good as well as the evil, and the evil as well as the good. But let us turn to France and inquire whether she has done any of the things mentioned. I will speak of Louis XII, and not of Charles VIII, as the one whose conduct is the better to be observed, he having held possession of Italy for the longest period, and you will see that he has done the opposite to those things which ought to be done to retain a state composed of diverse elements. King Louis was brought into Italy by the ambitions of the Venetians, who desired to obtain half the state of Lombardy by his intervention. I will not blame the course taken by the king, because wishing to get a foothold in Italy, and having no friends there, seeing rather that every door was shut to him owing to the conduct of Charles, he was forced to accept those friendships which he could get, and he would have succeeded very quickly in his design, if in other matters he had not made some mistakes. The king, however, having acquired Lombardy, regained at once the authority which Charles had lost. Genoa yielded, the Florentines became his friends, the Marquis of Mantua, the Duke of Ferrara, the Bentivogli, my Lady of Forli, the Lords of Faenza, of Pesaro, of Rimini, of Camerino, of Piombino, of Lucchese, the Pisans, the Sienese. Everybody made advances to him to become his friend. Then could the Venetians realize the rashness of the course taken by them, which, in order that they might secure 2 towns in Lombardy, they had made the king the master of 2/3 of Italy. Let anyone now consider with what little difficulty the king could have maintained his position in Italy, had he observed the rules above laid down, and kept all his friends secure and protected, for although they were numerous, they were both weak and timid, some afraid of the church, some of the Venetians, and thus they would always have been forced to stand in with him, and by their means he could easily have made himself secure against those who remained powerful. But he was no sooner in Milan than he did the contrary, by assisting Pope Alexander to occupy the Romagna. It never occurred to him that by this action he was weakening himself, depriving himself of friends, and of those who had thrown themselves into his lap, whilst he aggrandized the church by adding much temporal power to the spiritual, thus giving it greater authority. And having committed this prime error, he was obligated to follow it up, so much so that, to put an end to the ambition of Alexander, and to prevent his becoming the master of Tuscany, he was forced himself to come to Italy. And as if it were not enough to have aggrandized the church and deprived himself of friends, he, wishing to have the kingdom of Naples, divides it with the king of Spain, and where he was the prime arbiter in Italy, he takes an associate, so that the ambitious of that country and the malcontents of his own should have somewhere to shelter, and whereas he could have left the kingdom his own pensioner as king, he drove him out, to put one there who was able to drive him, Louis, out in turn. The wish to acquire is in truth very natural and common, and men always do so when they can, and for this they will be praised and not blamed. Yet when they cannot do so, yet wish to do so by any means, then there is folly and blame. Therefore, if France could have attacked Naples with her own forces, she ought to have done so. If she could not, then she ought not to have divided it. And if the partition which she had made with the Venetians and Lombardy was justified by the excuse that by it she got a foothold in Italy, this other partition merited blame, for it had not the excuse of that necessity. Therefore Louis made these 5 errors. He destroyed the minor powers. He increased the strength of one of the greater powers in Italy. He brought in a foreign power. He did not settle in the country. He did not send colonies. Which errors, had he lived, were not enough to injure him, had he not made a 6th, by taking away their dominions from the Venetians. Because, had he not aggrandized the church, nor brought Spain into Italy, it would have been very reasonable and necessary to humble them. But having first taken these steps, he ought never have consented to their ruin, for they, being powerful, would always have kept off others from designs on Lombardy, to which the Venetians would never have consented, except to become the masters themselves there. Also because the others would not wish to take Lombardy from France in order to give it to the Venetians, and to run counter to both, they would not have had the courage. And if anyone should say, King Louis yielded the Romagna to Alexander and the kingdom of Spain to avoid war, I answer for the reasons given above that a blunder ought never to be perpetrated to avoid war, because it is not to be avoided, but is only deferred to your disadvantage. And if another should allege the pledge which the king had given the Pope that he would assist him in the enterprise, in exchange for the dissolution of his marriage and for the cap to Rouen, to that I reply what I shall write later on, concerning the faith of princes and how it ought to be kept. Thus King Louis lost Lombardy, by not having followed any of the conditions observed by those who have taken possession of countries and wished to retain them. Nor is there any miracle in this, but much that is reasonable and quite natural. And on these matters he spoke at Nantes with Rouen, and when Valentino, as Cesare Borgia, the son of the Pope Alexander, was usually called, occupied the Romagna, and on Cardinal Rouen, observing to me that the Italians did not understand war, I replied to him that the French did not understand statecraft, meaning that otherwise they would not have allowed the Church to reach such greatness. And in fact it had been seen that the greatness of the Church and of Spain and Italy had been caused by France, and her ruin may be attributed to them. From this, a general rule was drawn, which never or rarely fails, that he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined, because that predominancy has been brought about either by astuteness or else by force, and both are distrusted by him who has been raised to power. Chapter 4. Why the kingdom of Darius conquered by Alexander, did not rebel against the successors of Alexander at his death. Considering the difficulties which men have to hold on to a newly acquired state, one might wonder how, seeing that Alexander the Great became master of Asia in a few years, and died whilst it was scarcely settled, whence it might appear reasonable that the whole empire would have rebelled. Nevertheless, his successors maintained themselves, and had to meet no other difficulty than which arose amongst themselves, from their own ambitions. I answer that the principalities of which one has record are found to be governed in two ways, either by a prince with a body of servants who assist him to govern the kingdom as ministers by his favour and permission, or by a prince and barons, who hold that dignity by antiquity of blood, and not by the grace of the prince. Such barons have states in their own subjects, who recognise them as lords and hold them in natural affection. Those states that are governed by a prince and his servants hold their prince in more consideration, because in all the country there is no one who is recognised as superior to him, and yet if they yield obedience to another, they do it as to a minister and an official, and they do not bear him any particular affection. Examples of these two governments in our time are the Turk and the King of France. The entire monarchy of the Turk is governed by one lord, but the others are his servants, and dividing his kingdom into sanjaks, he sends there different administrators, and shifts and changes them as he chooses. But the King of France is placed in the midst of an ancient body of lords, acknowledged by their own subjects and beloved by them. They have their own prerogatives, nor can the king take these away except at his peril. Therefore, he who considers both of these states will recognise great difficulties in seizing the state of the Turk, but once it is conquered, great ease in holding it. The cause of the difficulties in seizing the kingdom of the Turk are that the usurper cannot be called in by the princes of the kingdom, nor can he hope to be assisted in his designs by the revolt of those whom the Lord has around him. This arises from the reasons given above, for his ministers, all being slaves and bondsmen, can only be corrupted with great difficulty, and one can expect little advantage from them once they have been corrupted, as they cannot carry the people with them, for the reasons assigned. Hence, he who attacks the Turks must bear in mind that he will find him united, and will not have to rely more on his own strength than on the revolt of others. But if the Turk has been conquered, and routed in the field in such a way that he cannot replace his armies, there is nothing to fear but the family of the prince, and this, being exterminated, there remains no one to fear, the others having no credit with the people, and as the conqueror did not rely on them before his victory, so he ought not to fear them afterwards. The contrary happens in kingdoms governed like that of France, because one can easily enter there by gaining over some baron of the kingdom, for one always finds malcontents and such as desire a change. Such men, for the reasons given, can open up the way into the state and render the victory easy. But if you wish to hold it afterwards, you meet with infinite difficulties, both from those who have assisted you and from those you have crushed. Nor is it enough for you to have exterminated the family of the prince, because the lords that remain make themselves the heads of fresh movements against you, and as you are unable either to satisfy or exterminate them, that state is lost whenever time brings the opportunity. Now if you will consider what is the nature of the government of Darius, you will find it similar to the kingdom of the Turk, and therefore it was only necessary for Alexander first to overthrow him in the field, and then to take the country from him, after which victory, Darius being killed, the state remained secure to Alexander for the above reasons, and if his successors had been united, they would have enjoyed it securely and at their ease, for there were no tumults raised in the kingdom except those they provoked themselves. But it is impossible to hold with such tranquillity states constituted like that of France. Hence arose those frequent rebellions against the Romans in Spain, France, and Greece, owing to the many principalities there were in these states, of which, as long as the memory of them endured, the Romans always held an insecure possession. But with the power and long continuance of the empire, the memory of them passed away, and the Romans then became the secure possessors. And when fighting afterwards amongst themselves, each one was able to attach to himself his own parts of the country, according to the authority he had assumed there, and the family of the former lord being exterminated, none other than the Romans were acknowledged. When these things are remembered, no one will marvel at the ease with which Alexander held the empire of Asia, are the difficulties which others had to keep in acquisition, such as Pyrrhus and many more. This is not occasioned by the little or abundance of ability in the conqueror, but by the want of uniformity in the subject state. Chapter 5. Concerning the way to govern cities or principalities which lived under their own laws before they were annexed. Whenever those states which have been acquired, as stated, have been accustomed to live under their own laws and in freedom, there are three courses for those who wish to hold them. The first is to ruin them. The next is to reside there in person. The third is to permit them to live under their own laws, drawing a tribute and establishing it within an oligarchy which will keep it friendly to you. Because such a government, being created by the prince, knows it cannot stand without his friendship and interest, and it does the utmost to support him. And therefore he who would keep a city accustomed to freedom will hold it more easily by means of its own citizens than any other way. There are, for example, the Spartans and the Romans. The Spartans held Athens and Thebes, establishing there an oligarchy. Nevertheless, they lost them. The Romans, in order to hold Capua, Carthage and Numantia, dismantled them and did not lose them. They wished to hold Greece as the Spartans held it, making it free and permitting its laws, and did not succeed. So to hold it, they were compelled to dismantle many cities in the country. For in truth, there is no safe way to retain them, otherwise by ruining them. And he who becomes master of a city, accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it, may expect to be destroyed by it. For in rebellion, it has always the watchword of liberty, and its ancient privileges as a rallying point, which neither time nor benefits will ever cause it to forget. And whatever you may do or provide against, they never forget that name or their privileges unless they are disunited or dispersed. But at every chance they immediately rally to them, as Pisa after the 100 years that she had been held in bondage by the Florentines. But when cities or countries are accustomed to live under a prince, and his family is exterminated, they, being on the one hand accustomed to obey, and on the other not having the old prince, cannot agree in making one from amongst themselves, and they do not know how to govern themselves. For this reason they are very slow to take up arms, and a prince can gain them to himself and secure them much more easily. But in republics there is more vitality, greater hatred, and more desire for vengeance, which will never permit them to allow the memory of their former liberty to rest, so that the safest way is to destroy them or to reside there. Chapter 6. Concerning new principalities which are acquired by one's own arms and ability. Let no one be surprised if, in speaking of entirely new principalities, as I shall do, I adduce the highest examples of both prince and of state, because men, walking almost always in paths beaten by others, and following by imitation of their deeds, are yet unable to keep entirely to the ways of others, or attain to the power of those they imitate. A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men, and to imitate those who have been supreme, so that if his ability does not equal theirs, at least it will savour of it. Let him act like the clever archers, who, designing to hit the mark which yet appears too far distant, and knowing the limits to which the strength of their bow attains, take aim much higher than the mark, not to reach by their strength or arrow so great a height, but to be able with the aid of so high an aim to hit the mark they wish to reach. I say, therefore, that in entirely new principalities, where there is a new prince, more or less difficulty is found in keeping them, accordingly as there is more or less ability in him who acquired the state. Now, as the fact of becoming a prince from a private station presupposes either ability or fortune, it is clear that one or other of these things will mitigate in some degree many difficulties. Nevertheless, he who has relied least on fortune is established the strongest. Further, it facilitates matters when the prince, having no other state, is compelled to reside there in person. But to come to those who, by their own ability and not through fortune, have risen to be princes, I say that Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, Theseus, and such like are the most excellent examples. And although one may not discuss Moses, he having been a mere executor of the will of God, yet he ought to be admired, if only for that favour which made him worthy to speak with God. But in considering Cyrus and the others, who have acquired or founded kingdoms, all will be found admirable, and if their particular deeds and conduct shall be considered, they will not be found inferior to those of Moses, although he had so great a preceptor. And in examining their actions and lives, one cannot see that they owed anything to fortune beyond opportunity, which brought them the material to mould into the form which seemed best to them. Without that opportunity, their powers of mind would have been extinguished, and without those powers the opportunity would have come in vain. It was necessary, therefore, to Moses that he should find the people of Israel in Egypt enslaved and oppressed by the Egyptians, in order that they should be disposed to follow him, so as to be delivered out of bondage. It was necessary that Romulus should not remain in Alba, and that he should be abandoned at his birth, in order that he should become the king of Rome and founder of the fatherland. It was necessary that Cyrus should find the Persians discontented with the government of the Medes, and the Medes soft and effeminate through their long peace. Theseus could not have shown his ability had he not found the Athenians dispersed. These opportunities, therefore, made those men fortunate, and their high ability enabled them to recognize the opportunity whereby their country was ennobled and made famous. Those who by valorous ways become princes, like these men, acquire a principality with difficulty, but they keep it with ease. These difficulties they have in acquiring it rise in part from the new rules and methods which they are forced to introduce to establish their government and its security. And it ought to be remembered that there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things, because the innovator has for enemies all those who have done well under the old conditions, and lukewarm defenders in those who may do well under the new. This coolness arises partly from the fear of the opponents, who have the laws on their side, and partly from the incredulity of men, who do not readily believe in new things until they have long experience of them. Thus it happens that whenever those who are hostile have the opportunity to attack, they do it like partisans, whilst the others defend lukewarmly, in such wise that the prince is endangered along with them. It is necessary, therefore, if we desire to discuss the matter thoroughly, to inquire whether these innovators can rely on themselves or have to depend on others. That is to say, whether to consummate their enterprise, have they to use prayers or can they use force? In the first instance, they always succeed badly, and never compass anything, but when they can rely on themselves and use force, then they are rarely endangered. Hence it is that all armed prophets have conquered, and the unarmed ones have been destroyed. Besides the reasons mentioned, the nature of the people is variable, and whilst it is easy to persuade them, it is difficult to fix them in that persuasion, and thus it is necessary to take such measures that, when they believe no longer, it may be possible to make them believe by force. If Moses, Cyrus, Theseus, and Romulus had been unarmed, they could not have enforced their constitutions for so long, as happened in our time to Fra Girolamo Savonarola, who was ruined with his new order of things immediately the multitude believed in him no longer, and he had no means of keeping steadfast those who believed or of making the unbelievers to believe. Therefore, such as these have great difficulties in consummating their enterprise, for all their dangers are yet in the ascent, yet with ability they will overcome them. But when these are overcome, and those who envied them their success are exterminated, they will begin to be respected, and they will continue afterwards powerful, secure, honoured, and happy. To these great examples I wish to add a lesser one. It still bears some resemblance to them, and I wish it to suffice me for all of a like kind. It is Hiero the Syracusan. This man rose from a private station to be the Prince of Syracuse, nor did he, either, owe anything to fortune but to opportunity, for the Syracusans, being oppressed, chose him for their captain. Afterwards he was rewarded by being made their prince. He was of so great ability, even as a private citizen, that one who writes of him says he wanted nothing but a kingdom to be a king. This man abolished the old soldiery, organized the new, gave up old alliances and made new ones, and as he had his own soldiers and allies, on such foundations he was able to build any edifice. Thus, while he had endured much trouble in acquiring, he had but little in keeping. Chapter 7. Concerning new principalities which are acquired by either the arms of others or by good fortune. Those who solely by good fortune become princes from being private citizens have little trouble in rising, but much trouble in keeping atop. They have not any difficulties on the way up, because they fly, but they have many when they reach the summit. Such are those whom some
Actually, that Machiavellian shit gets real annoying real quick. Like the type of psychopathy that he describes there with like believing it 100%. It's I don't think it's the healthiest. I'm just not listening to that anymore. Even though it does go well with the medieval scenes of Neverwinter medieval fantasy. Anyway, took out a bunch of zombies. I guess we got some information about the cult. That was useful, probably. I think it was like northeast the cult is located at, and like this guy's brother. I think this guy who lives here, like that guy's brother, was a part of the cult, I guess. And the cult was like shady because the zombies don't attack the cult, and ooh, can I recruit you? Aldo. Well, that's just rude. Easy, I'm not your enemy. Humph, the dead ones don't talk back, so I guess you are okay. Can't blame a guy for being careful, though. You ain't seen a tall folk named Hector, have ya? Sent him out from wagon parts, and damned if he ain't just disappeared. Sorry, haven't seen him. Dang it down! Do me a favor. If you see him, tell him to get those wagon parts back here on the double. He's probably not coming back. Don't know that. Maybe the parts are too big for him, but I ain't leaving my stuff until I have to. Zombies or not. Shouldn't you go look for him? I gotta wait for him to come back. I ain't leaving the wagon until there's no other hope. Plain and simple. I'll tell him if I see him. I don't get good luck. I get stuck in a zombie-filled city with a broken wagon and the scorn of my wife. Ew, that's sad. Thanks anyway, I guess. Wife.
Greeting. Nice to see someone still alive out here. I prefer that we were talking somewhere safe, but it's still nice.
Well, lovely wife you have. Of course, if my husband would get us the heck out of here, it would be even nicer. Who are you? Well, my name is Machiavelli, and for why I am out here, that's a very good question. Why don't you ask the cart? Don't start, woman. I'm doing my best over here. Save it, Aldo. I'm getting real tired of waiting for a wagon wheel in the middle of a zombie-infested street. She makes sense. She does make sense. You shouldn't be staying here. I could lead you out. Have you seen anything dangerous first? Yeah. Other than legions of undead, a husband that puts his cart ahead of his family, and a plague that seems almost apocalyptic? Nope, nothing really. I've been too busy trying to stay alive. We'll be alright. Aldo will keep us safe. He's a good man. A bit too attached to the cart, I think, but a good man. Your cart kind of sucks, and like, how do you like plan to move it? You are real small. I'm more concerned about finding Hector. Aldo sent him for wagon parts, and I'm worried for his safety. Family friend, you understand. Okay, goodbye. Ooh, chesto. There's a lot of chests in the game. I kind of dig that, even though they don't give insane rewards yet, but it's a lot to do with the game. It's like unexpectedly action packed kind of, or like there's lots to do. It's It's a good game. It's much more smooth than First Impressions. Lots to explore, lots to interact with. Holga.
I greet you.
Pray you are not here to hurt me. Few questions. I can't stop you asking, just hurry up so I can lock and block the door again. Biggest nest, I can try to answer if you wish. Has the effect of the plague been bad? Oh, hundreds, all dead, thousands maybe, I don't know. It's a nightmare. I think it started here and nobody really cared until it spread, so it's basically COVID in Wuhan. Now it's everywhere, blah blah blah. I've been trying to stay away from people, trying to keep healthy. I haven't seen anyone else in days, weeks. It's horrible. Are there any safe places? I don't know, blah blah blah. Walking Dead, plague, too much. Helmet Shrine, or Shining Serpent. It's a tavern and inn. I know they always talk pretty tough. Blah blah. South Central is where it is. Harbor with make sure people are safe. Helmet Shrine, Community Shrine. Helmets arrived. They fixed the place up nice. Cool. Southeast. Effects of plague been bad. Hundreds full dead. I heard that already. Can you tell me anything about the zombies? I don't want to know anything about any Walking Dead. It's not right. When they start showing up, I don't know, not too long ago, a while after the plague. Strange happened around that time? Maybe, I don't know. There were a bunch of gods that searched the whole nest. Maybe an animal, they had cages. Ooh. So someone was looking for the water Davian creatures that our paladin lost. Have you heard of anything odd? Haven't left home, I'm no fighter, so you won't join me, I understand. Anything strange besides the plague? I never thought anyone, blah blah. A gang, what do you know about the gang? The Sword Coast Boys. The rest of the lot is Droll. The rest just babies. What are these Dark Sun followers? Shh, they follow Cyric. I stay the heck away from them. The whole lot are out of their minds. Just crazy. I hope the plague took them. Not a decent one of the lot. Nah, these guys made the plague happen, you know. Probably. How good is the security in the district? Pretty poor. Because I would like to offer you protection. That's shady, but I'll press on that option. What do you mean? Are you threatening me? Are you trying to get me to pay so you leave me alone? I think that would be safest. Nah, goodbye. I'm not a fucking Trumpian ass bitch. So, I guess I've explored most of the stuff. I guess I haven't been here. I guess this is the shrine thing? Can I open this? Nah. Okay, maybe it's open on the other side. Nope. Nope. Think the full wagon we already visited, but what else? Yeah. Can I read a note or something? A letter from Olaf. Is to be presented to Briley, a young cleric guarding a tomb in the Peninsula District. Okay, cool. Tommy's contact. This short piece of paper is covered with more than a few grease stains and has been signed in a near illegible script by Tommy himself. Apparently it exists to prove that the halfling is In your service as a henchman. Oh, this is this guy, yeah. Gotcha. Journal of Marcus Penhold. Excerpt. I have hidden with the rest in fear of the plague, but I have no such anxiety about some pitiful shambling zombies. My brother awaits at the shrine the helmets maintain in the beggar's nest, but I will not be joining him. Finally, there's something real to fight. This is the journal of Marcus Penhold, a young mage. The details of his life are uneventful, although the last entry is now likely more prophetic than the writer might have wished. Okay. I guess this is the dead mage then. I like how the reading materials are like summarized. Like nowadays, like Star Rail and stuff like that just throws like a bunch of text at you, but this is summarized. This magic scroll is to be used near the large tree outside the zoo in the Backlog district. It will transform that single large tree into a portal through which the animals of the zoo can escape. After they are through, the druid Nyata will see to their well-being. Ah, yeah, I got that from the quest giver. Okay, cool. Anyway, I think we're gonna go to... get these chests. Then I guess shrine sounds lovely. Okie dokie, come here, like you're over in the wrong direction. Mine is spike trap, nice. Come on here, like why is it so shitty? Merchant, the Shining Serpent, so that's the tavern-like thing. Did I already... I think I visited this place, yeah. Okay, so where are you, my good companion? Did you just run away entirely? Why is the pathfinding so shit in the game? Did they test it even? Like, this is not a... Like, cancel that shit. Come here. Heal me. Follow.
No can do. Okay, dokie.
Which one is it then? Hokey poke or no can do? Anyway, we're gonna let you open that shit. Okay, all three are closed.
Okay, dokie.
Cool. Lots of stuff.
Dokie.
Hokey dokes. Nice.
Okay, dokie.
Ooh, what's this? A two-bladed sword. Nice.
Looking, Tommy.
What can Tommy do? Think I need to put the blade back in. Otherwise, I'm just massively over encumbered. I should have played a strength character. Whatever. Can I see the value of the things? Weight, blah blah blah, two-handed. Sounds nice though. I would like to know the value. Can I... Just a battle axe, just a scimitar. What's the weight? 9er. Ooh, I have longbow here. Longbows are actually my thing, so equip. My kind of thing. Ooh, I have torches, so I can also torch the bodies. How much is this? Weight 2. Weight 15. 4. 7. 4. 4. Yeah, I probably need to leave the two-hander here, even though it looks cool. It's kind of a cool weapon. Okay, I think I need to quickly do Honkai dailies. So I need to put this game to a pause. Quickly getting all the loot in.
Okay, dokie.
Open it up. Okie dokes. I think I've gotten all of the...
It's done.
Ooh, double axe. That's super nice. Okay, I am encumbered, but I'll get the double axe in the same place as the sword, and I can maybe come back and salvage it at some point. It's the only place that's on the... at the center, like on the little elevated place. It is 25, super heavy. Okay, so I'm gonna save here. And okie dokes. I still have 14 minutes to do to do dailies in Star Rail. Wish me luck.